Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about some fantasy books that I don't think get the recognition or the attention that they deserve on booktube. Now in one of my last videos I talked about underrated fantasy books, and my definition at the time was books that received less than 5,000 ratings on Goodreads. However, while I was doing research for that video, while I was going through my read list on Goodreads, I came across quite a bit of books that have more than 5,000 ratings. However, I feel like they get talked about less on Goodreads than those hidden gems with less than 5,000 ratings. Now, of course, a big part of that is that Goodreads is not Cult of the New. If you have an older book, you will get rewarded for that with your ratings because, of course, you have 20 years of ratings that have accumulated. Even though in the last 5 years barely anybody picked up your book, you still have those older ratings. While in BookTube, it's of course the other way around. New releases get a lot of hype. You have the anticipated releases lists at this time of the year. You have the arcs that a lot of booktubers talk about. It gets on the TBR because of that, it gets on the wrap-up because of that, and most people also like to make reviews of new releases because a lot of people are looking for that on BookTube. So some of these books are older releases that, because of that, they're not part of the active conversation, and quite a bit of these are also new releases, I want to say in the last 5 to 10 years, that for whatever reason don't really get talked about on BookTube, but I have heard people in other book communities talk about them. But before we get into that list, I quickly want to mention a book that has barely any ratings, and if I would have read it by the time of filming that last video, I would have definitely included it. However, this is a recent read, so I still really want to shout it out. That is On Winter's Eve by C.D. Alexander. I talked about this in my recent wrap-up that I will link somewhere on the screen, but a perfect book to pick up in this period of time, in this holiday period. It's only 140 pages long, and I have heard that it's available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you want to have a feel-good atmospheric winter read, definitely pick this one up. Also, if you want to maybe read it to your children, because this is fitting for all age ranges. One that I highly recommend. And now on to the main part of the video, of course. The first book that I have here is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This is a more or less new release. It came out at the end of 2021 and it made my 2021 top 10 list. So of course I really enjoyed this one, and its sequel is coming out in 2023. So perfect timing to put this first book in the Magic of the Lost trilogy on your TBR. In this epic fantasy, we follow two women. The first one is Touraine. Touraine was abducted as a child and she was raised as a child soldier in the empire that now uses her homeland as a colony. However, at the start of this book, she gets sent to her homeland as a soldier because a rebellion is going on. But of course, this is going to lead to some very conflicting emotions. She doesn't really know where her loyalties lie. Is this for the empire, where she was raised as a child soldier, where she was indoctrinated, or is this for this colony that was actually her homeland? On the other hand, we also follow Luca. Luca is the heir to the throne. However, her uncle at this moment is regent, and she doesn't really know if he will ever give the crown to her, but maybe helping butting down this rebellion will at least incent him to feel that she is strong enough to become an actual empress. So yes, of course, we follow these two women. This is an LGBTQ plus story. I really enjoyed this one. I loved the queer romance that we have here as well. I loved the character work of the two people, and I do know that a lot of booktubers that I've heard talk about them at the end of 2021 did not really enjoy this one, but for me, like I said, it was a favorite. So definitely give it a chance if any of these buzzwords sounds interesting to you. Next up, I want to talk about an author in general, and that is Juliette Murlier. Now, even though I know that most people have heard of Juliette Murlier, I think that a lot of people don't even want to give her a try for the wrong reasons. A lot of people know Juliette Murlier as a romance author, a fantasy romance author, and even though that's not wrong, if you compare her then to Sarah J. Maas or to a lot of smut-filled romances, I do think that that's not an honest comparison. First of all, Juliette Murlier's works do not have smut in them. All of the romances are very kid-friendly, they're very sweet, and it's more based on the psychological nature of it and the emotional nature. It's very slow burn compared to some other romance authors. And there's a lot more to Juliette Murlier's works than just a romance. A lot of them are very historically accurate. If you like the Picts, for example, this one, the Bride Chronicles, is about Bride, who is one of the first kings of the Picts, and a lot of it is historically accurate. Now, there's not a lot known about the Picts, so of course, a big part here is imagination, and if you hate romance, I don't think that you will enjoy any of Juliette Murlier's books, but if the only romance that you have come across is Sarah J. Maas, definitely give it a try anyway. She also has the Saga of the Light Isles duology, which is focusing on Vikings, so if you like that, definitely give that one a try. Both this one as that one have also a male POV, so a male main character, which is very interesting to read about as well. And she just has a lot of different things. I think if you like historical fantasy, some of her works will definitely also be for you. If you've only read Daughter of the Forest and because of that you think that her works are too sweet and too magical and too romance heavy, then definitely give some other of her works a try, because not all of them are like that. And then I would definitely recommend either the Bride Chronicles, which is a trilogy, or the Saga of the Light Isles, which is a duology. So yes, just an author that you need to check out and don't really dismiss because of the romance factor. There's a lot more to her. Then I wanted to talk about a grim dark trilogy that honestly, I think that most people who enjoy grimdark would absolutely love this one, and that is The Grim Company by Luke Scull. Especially if you are a fan of the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, this is the First Law but better, in my opinion. I would say that I don't really know a lot about the writing style because it's been a while since I've read it, and I read it in Dutch, which is a translation. But this is the original First Law trilogy, but with more plot, more magic, and for me, more interesting characters. If you love Giselle in First Law, definitely give this one a try, because in this book, Giselle is basically the main character. We also have a Northman, the second book, which is the Sword of the North, I think, if I'm not mistaken, focuses on the background story of that Northman, and that's something that I missed in the original First Law trilogy. So definitely, if that's something that you find interesting, pick this one up. I think that it's a masterpiece, and I found this such a shame that a lot of people don't really try this one, especially because I think that everybody who likes First Law, everybody who likes grimdark will absolutely adore this trilogy as well. Then next up, I do have a Greek myth retelling that I don't really understand why it's not that well known, why I don't really see a lot of people on booktube pick it up, because the author is quite well known for some of her other works, and that is The Children of Jocasta by Natalie Haynes. Now, this is my favorite Greek myth retelling. As far as I know, I've gone through my shelves, and yes, definitely. This is a tragedy, and this is actually a retelling of the story of Oedipus, but in a very interesting way. You have two timelines. You have one where you actually meet Oedipus, where you actually meet his wife, and then you have the other one where you meet children in the castle, and you don't really know how they are connected until a certain point of time. Really enjoyed this one. It's a shorter one, and to be honest, I have not read any other works by Natalie Haynes, but I've read Circe, I've read The Song of Achilles, and this one is miles better, especially if you like a tragedy, if you like slow burn, if you like the feeling of dread that something horrible is happening, but you don't really know how and you don't really know when it is going to all happen and all come together. This is one that you need to give a try. And also the audio is amazing, so if you like audiobooks, again, why not pick it up? Now, I also wanted to take the time to shout out some older fantasy stories, and for that I have two standalones. The first one is Deerskin by Robin McKinley. Now, this is a recent read, and by no means is this a 5-star read. It had highs, it had lows, it's definitely a journey, but I do think that this is a quite unique read, especially if you only read new releases or more modern fantasy, because this is different in terms of writing style, it's different in terms of how characters are executed, plot is executed, and just in general, the highs here are definitely 5 stars. So just for that alone, pick it up. It's a quick read. You can easily squeeze this in. It's 300 pages. Why not? This is actually a retelling of a not that well-known fairy tale called Donkey Skin, and in this one we meet a young princess who is the spitting image of her mother. Her mother was deceased when she was younger, and being very similar to her mother actually leads to some horrible events on the eve of her 17th birthday, which lead her to run away from home together with her dear hound Ash. Now, animal companions, of course, and if you like animals in stories, there's more hounds to discover in this works, and that's the part that I enjoyed most of all. The ending is a little bit weird, but honestly one that I would give a try anyway. And then the other that I have here is Somerset Castle Auburn by Sharon Shin, especially if you like Juliette Marillier's works, if you like to have a romance that's very sweet, that's very just feel good in general, but you don't really need to have a very historically accurate background, you don't really need to have deeper works that you often see with Juliette Marillier, then definitely give this one a chance. In this one we meet a bastard, and in the summers she lives at Castle Auburn, because her uncle still wants her to become part of the royal household, but in the winters she lives with her grandmother, who is a herbswoman. So when she grows up, she needs to decide which path in life she wants to take. In terms of fantasy, there is a little bit of fantasy, but honestly not that much. You have a sort of fairy kingdom, but it's a side plot. The most important part here is this coming of age story of this young girl who needs to decide which path in life she wants to take, and of course there's also a romance. So just a feel-good book that you can definitely read in between maybe some harsher reads or in between series and you want to have a palate cleanser. pick this one up. Now, if you do like historical fantasy, if you like the history of Britain, of the Picts, of the Celts, and how that is mysterious and magical, I think that this next book will be for you. And that is Sister Song by Lucy Holland. Now, this is actually a retelling of an ancient British folk ballad called The Three Sisters, and of course, in this one, we meet three sisters. These are the daughters of the king, and they have very distinct personalities. The youngest one is very carefree, she knows that she's beautiful, and she uses that to her advantage quite a bit. The middle sister has the magical power to heal people, but she cannot heal her own body, which was deformed when she was younger because of an accident. And then the eldest one wants to become the king. But of course, in this time period, if you were born biologically female, this is not really possible. So this is also a little bit of a gender study to see how this character meets or discovers their true potential. Now, if this is not enough, at a certain point in this story, a stranger enters the kingdom, and there is a romance with one of these three siblings. However, up until the end, you don't really know if he's actually a good person or not. So that enters a feeling of dread in this story. That, if you know me, I love that feeling of something horrible. It might be happening. I don't really know. Should I be hopeful or not? Definitely one that I would highly recommend, and a standalone. Standalones in fantasy are always a plus. Then I have a Greek myth retelling that I want to recommend. Of course, if you like Greek myth retellings, but more importantly, if you like it when it's told from the POV of the women who played a very big role, but in the original myth, you don't really see a lot of them. And that is Daughters of Sparta by Claire Haywood. In this one, we follow the two daughters of Sparta, Helen of Sparta or Helen of Troy, and we also follow Clytemnestra, who was her sister. We follow them from the start when they're young girls to when they get married to the events that lead to the Trojan War. Now, if you want to see the Trojan War, that's not happening here. This is a story of these women who don't really play a big part of the war, but they play a big part in the events that lead to that war, and that's what we see here. I love this story. I especially love the feeling of dread, the feeling of, is a tragedy going to happen or not? Am I allowed to hope, or will my heart be shattered? Absolutely adore this one, and one that I would highly recommend if you like this POV told from the story of women. And the next one that I have here is quite similar in that sense that it is an Arthurian legend retelling. It's very loosely based on the Arthurian legend, and it's also more historically accurate than that legend. But it's told from the POV of Langrod, who was a woman in this time period. She was a very well-known and very powerful queen. However, a lot of books don't really focus on her. She is the sister of the historically accurate person on whom a lot of people think Merlin is based. So definitely one if you want to have the more historically accurate background. Of course, for this time period, not a lot of it is known. So a lot of this is filled in by the author, but some of the battles that we see in this book or in this trilogy are definitely historically accurate. And all of the other things are accurate for that time period. Now, there is definitely a little bit of a romance here as well, but I would say that that is more a side line, a side plot, that if you don't like romance, you will still very much enjoy this trilogy, so one that I highly recommend. Now, of course, I also needed to recommend 12 Kings by Bradley P. Bolio. This is the first book in the Song of the Shattered Sand series, which is an epic desert-based fantasy series, and that follows Cheda. Cheda is on a revenge quest. She wants to revenge the death of her mother, who was killed by these 12 immortal kings of Shawarkai. Now, these 12 kings were given their power by the desert gods, so Cheda doesn't really know why these kings killed her mother, but she wants to find out. And while she's trying to find their weak spots, while she's trying to find why they were given their power and how she can take that power away from them, she also discovers some lies that has been told over history. Now, I want to say that this first book is already solid, in my opinion, but the second book really opens up the world. The political intrigue goes from barely existent to all over the place. This is definitely a more dense fantasy series. A lot of things are going on. You have a lot of characters, but if you like that type of thing, if you like A Song of Ice and Fire, for example, I think that this series will definitely be right up your alley. And if you don't enjoy the first book, please keep reading, and at the very least read the second one before you decide to DNF, because Bradley P. Bolio also grew as an author between the first and the second one, in my opinion. And then the other author that, of course, I want to talk about just quickly, because I have talked about her quite a bit on the channel, is Patricia M. McKillop. If you like fairy tales, give her a chance. She has an amazing backlog. I think that she might have written more than 50 books, and all of them are either original fairy tales or fairy tale retellings of fairy tales that are not well known, so they will feel like they are original. These are short books, they are beautiful and perfect to pick up between bigger fantasy books. So yes, give Patricia M. McKillop a try if you are into fairy tales. For me, Alphabet of Thorn is my favorite one yet, but I am confident that at the very least I will like multiple books or the majority of books that she has written, so please give her a try. So these are my hidden gem recommendations. Please let me know if you've read any of these and if you do agree that they deserve some more recognition on BookTube. And also let me know your hidden gem recommendation that I should pick up. If you want to see my previous underrated fantasy book recommendation video, you can watch that one right here. These are the ones that have less than 5,000 ratings on Goodreads. As always, I hope that you enjoyed this video and see you next time. Bye!